The observatory dome closed with a mechanical whir as Lucas Chen packed up his equipment. Another night of cataloging stars, another night alone with the universe. At 32, he'd grown accustomed to the solitude that came with being the sole astronomer at Pine Ridge Observatory. Nestled in the mountains, far from city lights? Time to call it a night, he muttered, checking his watch. 2:17 a.m. The witching hour. As his grandmother used to say, that's when he saw it, a streak of violet light cutting across the sky, moving too erratically to be a meteor. Lucas grabbed his binoculars, tracking the object as it disappeared behind the tree line with a distant crash that shook the ground beneath his feet. Something inside him knew this wasn't ordinary space debris. Heart pounding. Lucas grabbed his emergency backpack and flashlight before racing to his pickup truck. The forest was eerily quiet as he followed. The path of broken branches and scorched earth, the smell of ozone and something sweet like lavender, mixed with electricity, filled the air. When he reached the small clearing, Lucas froze. A sleek vessel, no larger than a small car, lay partially buried in disturbed soil. Its surface shimmered with an iridescent purple glow that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. But what made Lucas's breath catch wasn't the ship, it was the figure slumped against, fallen log nearby. She looked almost human at first glance. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face with 2 eyes. But her skin was a soft lavender that seemed to shimmer with tiny points of light, like stars embedded in twilight. Her hair floated around her head as if suspended in water, despite the still night air. "Hello?" Lucas called softly, approaching with caution. "Are you hurt?" The being's eyes snapped open, completely violet, with no visible pupils and fixed on him. Fear flashed across her face as she tried to scramble backward, wincing in pain. "It's okay," Lucas said, holding up his hands. "I won't hurt you." "I'm Lucas." The alien regarded him warily, then spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes and rainfall. "Your language. I can adapt." Her lips moved slightly out of sync with the words as if her mind was translating in real time. "I am called Lyra. You're injured," Lucas noted, gesturing to the purple liquid seeping from a gash on her arm. "My vessel, ... malfunction. Your planet's magnetic fields, ... She swayed slightly, her light dimming. "They will come for me." "Who will?" Lucas asked, alarmed. "Your government?" Lyra's eyes closed briefly. "They always do. I have studied your world enough to know what happens to those who fall from the stars." Lucas knew she was right. If authorities found her, she'd disappear into some classified facility, never to be seen again. "Can you walk?" he asked, making a split-second decision that would change both their lives. "My home isn't far." Lyra studied him, those starlit eyes seeming to peer into his soul. "Why would you help me, human?" Lucas couldn't fully explain it himself. Maybe it was years of loneliness. Or maybe it was something in her eyes that spoke of a kindred spirit, someone else who understood what it meant to exist in. "Isolation, because the universe is vast," he said simply. "And yet you crashed right where I could find you. That seems like more than coincidence." Lyra's light brightened slightly as she nodded. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your stars after all, Lucas of Earth." The morning light filtered through the blinds of Lucas's cabin as he carefully cleaned Lyra's wound. The purple liquid which he now understood was her blood had stopped flowing, but the gash remained an angry violet against her lavender skin. "Your cellular structure is fascinating," Lucas said, examining the wound through a magnifying glass. As a scientist, he couldn't help his curiosity. "It seems to be healing already." "My kind regenerates quickly," Lyra explained, watching him with those starlit eyes. "But this planet, something in your atmosphere slows the process." Lucas lived alone in his cabin, adjacent to the observatory, a perfect hiding place for an extraterrestrial visitor. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and few people ever ventured this deep into the mountains. "Are you comfortable?" he asked, placing a clean bandage over the wound. His fingers brushed against her skin, which felt warm and tingled slightly at his touch. "Yes, your dwelling is adequate," Lyra's gaze wandered around his modest living room with its stacks of astronomy books and star charts pinned to the walls. "You study the cosmos." Lucas nodded. "It's my life's work." to understand what's out there. And yet you never expected to find me, Lyra said with what might have been a smile. Over the next few days, Lucas called in sick to the observatory, claiming a severe flu. He spent his time caring for Lyra and learning about her world. She came from a planet called Lumina, orbiting a distant star she couldn't quite identify in Earth's sky. Her people, the Luminari, were explorers who studied other civilizations from afar. We believe in non-interference, she explained, as they shared dinner on the third night. Lyra couldn't eat solid food but absorbed nutrients from water infused with minerals. Your world is still young, still evolving. Is that why no official contact has been made? Lucas asked. Partly. And partly because your kind tends to fear what you do not understand. Lucas couldn't argue with that assessment. By the end of the first week, Lucas noticed something concerning. Though Lyra's wound was healing, she seemed to be growing weaker. Her luminous skin dimmed, and the starlight in her eyes faded. What's happening to you? He asked one evening, finding her slumped on the couch, her breathing shallow. My life force. It requires connection, she whispered. My people are psychically linked. Isolation is difficult for us. You're dying, Lucas realized with horror. Fading, she corrected gently. Without the communal energy of my kind, I cannot sustain myself indefinitely. Can I help? He asked desperately. There must be something I can do. Lyra looked up at him, her expression vulnerable. Physical proximity can help. My people. We share energy through touch, through closeness. Lucas swallowed hard, understanding dawning. You need contact. Yes, she admitted, but I would not ask this of you. Our species are different, Lucas finished, but maybe not as different as you think. He sat beside her on the couch and slowly, carefully, took her hand in his. A gentle current seemed to flow between them, not unpleasant, but strange. Like static electricity, but warmer, more alive. Lyra's skin brightened noticeably at the contact, and her breathing steadied. Better? He asked softly. Yes, she whispered, her fingers intertwining with his. You are? Kind, Lucas of Earth. As night fell, Lucas knew a simple touch wouldn't be enough. Lyra needed more substantial connection to survive until they could find a way to contact her people. Lyra, he said as her light dimmed again, despite their joined hands. What else can I do? Her violet eyes met his, filled with both hope and hesitation. Among my people, we share sleep, she said quietly. The unconscious mind bridges gaps the conscious cannot. Lucas understood what she was asking. You want me to sleep beside you? If you are willing, she replied. The connection. It sustains life. That night, Lucas made a bed of blankets on the living room floor. As they lay side by side, he felt awkward at first. It had been years since he'd shared such intimate space with anyone. But as Lyra's light began to pulse more steadily, illuminating the room with a gentle purple glow, he knew he'd made the right choice. Thank you, she whispered as her eyes drifted closed, for seeing me as a person, not just a discovery. As Lucas fell asleep beside her, he wondered what dreams might come when shared with someone from the stars. 2 weeks had passed since. Lyra crashed into Lucas's life. Each night, they slept side by side on the floor of his living room. And each morning, Lucas woke, feeling strangely energized. As though he'd absorbed some of Lyra's starlight. You look different, Lyra observed one morning as Lucas made coffee. Your aura is brighter. My aura. Lucas laughed. I didn't know humans had those. All living things do, she explained, hovering nearby. She moved differently now, lighter, as if gravity affected her less when she was healthy. Yours has changed since we began sharing sleep. Lucas felt his cheeks warm. Their nightly arrangement was strictly for her survival, he reminded himself. Yet he couldn't deny the growing connection between them. Each night, their bodies seemed to gravitate closer, until he would wake to find her nestled against him, her shimmering hair spread across his chest. I should check on your ship today, he said, changing the subject. See if any parts are salvageable. They hiked through the forest together, Lucas leading the way. The fallen leaves crunched beneath his boots while Lyra seemed to barely touch the ground. "Tell me about the stars in your system," Luke said as they walked. "We have 3 suns," Lyra replied. "The days are never dark. My people evolved without fear of darkness. We never needed it." "Is that why you were so afraid that first night?" Lucas asked, remembering her terror. "Yes. Darkness is ... unsettling. On Lumina, we are never truly alone or in darkness." Her voice grew quieter. "That is why isolation is fatal to my kind." They reached the clearing where her ship lay. It's now covered with fallen leaves and forest debris. Lucas approached cautiously, but Lyra moved directly to a panel on the side, her fingers dancing across symbols that glowed at her touch. "The communication array is damaged," she said after examining the interior. "But the emergency beacon still functions. If I can boost its signal ... how long would it take your people to reach Earth?" Lucas asked, surprised by the sudden tightness in his chest. Lyra looked up at him, her violet eyes unreadable. "Months, perhaps. Does that concern you?" "I just ... double quotes." Lucas struggled to find the right words. "I wasn't expecting to say goodbye so soon." Something flickered across Lyra's face, an emotion he couldn't identify. "I have been a burden to you." "No," Lucas said firmly, stepping closer. "Never that." On impulse, he reached out and took her hand. The now familiar energy flowed between them, but this time it felt different, stronger, more intimate. Lyra's light pulsed brighter in response. "What was that?" Lucas asked, breathless. "Our connection grows," she whispered. "It becomes more than survival now." That evening, as they prepared their shared sleeping space, an autumn storm rolled in. Thunder crashed overhead, and Lyra flinched at each boom, her light fluctuating with anxiety. "We don't have such violence in our skies," she explained, wrapping her arms around herself. Lucas hesitated only briefly before opening his arms to her. "Come here." She moved into his embrace, her body fitting against his as if designed to do so. Her skin was warm, vibrating slightly with what might have been fear or something else entirely. "I've got you," he murmured into her starbright hair. As they settled onto their makeshift bed, Lucas found himself tracing patterns on her arm with his fingertips. Each touch left trails of light on her skin that slowly faded like dying stars. "Lucas," she whispered in the darkness, her face inches from his. "On my world, this closeness, it would mean something significant." Lucas's heart hammered in his chest. What would it mean? Bond? A sharing of more than just space? Her eyes searched his. "Is it the same for humans?" "Yes," he admitted. "Physical closeness usually means emotional closeness too." Lyra's hand came up to touch his face, leaving tingling warmth in its wake. "Then perhaps our species are not so different after all." As the storm raged outside, something new and unexpected blossomed between them, something neither science nor diplomacy had prepared them for. For the first time in his life, Lucas began looking forward to sleep. Each night as he drifted off beside Lyra, his consciousness seemed to expand beyond the confines of his small cabin into something vast and beautiful. "I saw your world last night," Lucas told Lyra over breakfast. "Crystal spires that caught the light of 3 suns. Was that real or just my imagination?" Lyra nearly dropped the glass of mineral water she was absorbing nutrients from. "You shared my dreamscape." Her voice trembled with what might have been wonder or concern. "Is that bad?" Lucas asked. "No, it's single." She set down her glass, her purple fingers trembling slightly. "Such deep connection usually only happens between bonded pairs. Our minds are becoming attuned." Lucas thought about what that might mean. Over the past 3 weeks, their sleeping arrangement had evolved naturally. What began as lying side by side had become a nightly embrace. Lyra's head on his chest, his arms around her slender form, her luminous hair spilling across him like a river of starlight. "I don't mind," he said quietly. "Sharing your dreams." That evening, as they repaired the emergency beacon from Lyra's ship, using parts Lucas had salvaged from old radio equipment. He found himself watching her more closely. The graceful movement of her fingers as they worked. The way her skin brightened when she was excited about a breakthrough. How her eyes, so alien yet somehow familiar, now crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "You're staring," she observed, without looking up from her work. "Sorry," Lucas said, embarrassed at being caught. "It's just ... You're beautiful." Lyra's entire body pulsed with light for a moment, like a star flaring. In Luminari culture, such declarations are not made lightly. They're not made lightly in human culture either, Lucas replied, holding her gaze. Later that night, as they settled into their now familiar sleeping position, Lucas found the courage to ask what had been on his mind. "What happens when your people come for you?" Lyra was silent for a long moment, her hand tracing patterns on his chest that left glowing trails in their wake. "I would return to my duties, my studies of your world. Would I ... double quotes?" Lucas swallowed hard. "Would I ever see you again?" She raised herself up on one elbow to look at him, her violet eyes serious. No Luminari has ever maintained an ongoing connection with an inhabitant of a pre-contact world. "So that's a no," Lucas said, his heart sinking. "It would be unprecedented," she corrected. "But then all of this is unprecedented." Before he could respond, she leaned down and pressed her lips to his. The contact sent waves of warmth and light cascading through his entire body as if he'd swallowed a star. When she pulled back, her entire form was glowing brilliantly. "That's how your people kiss?" he asked, breathless. "No," she whispered. "That's how I learned humans do." That night, their shared dreams were more vivid than ever. Lucas found himself floating with Lyra through the cosmos, seeing stars not as distant points of light, but as living entities, each with its own song. He felt the interconnectedness of all things in a way his human mind had never comprehended before. When he awoke, Lyra was watching him, her expression tender. "You understand now, don't you? Why isolation is so difficult for my kind. We are meant to be connected to each other, to the universe." "I think I do," Lucas said, reaching up to touch her face. "And I think I've been isolated too, in my own way, until you, the beacon, was complete." As Lucas watched, Lyra activated it with a touch, sending a signal across the vast emptiness of space to her people. The purple device pulsed rhythmically on his kitchen table, a constant reminder that their time together had an expiration date. "How long?" he asked, not needing to elaborate. 3 Earth months for the signal to reach Lumina," Lyra replied. "Perhaps another 2 for a vessel to reach your solar system." 5 months? It seemed both an eternity and no time at all. "What do we do now?" Lucas asked. Lyra's luminous eyes met his. "We live, Lucas. We share the time we have." And so they did. Lucas returned to his work at the observatory, making excuses for his absence and throwing himself back into his research with renewed passion. At night, he would share his discoveries with Lyra, who often understood the cosmos in ways his human science was only beginning to grasp. "Your theories about dark matter are partially correct," she told him one evening as they pored over his data. "But you're thinking too linearly. The universe breathes in dimensions you cannot yet perceive." With Lyra's insights, Lucas's research took quantum leaps forward. He published papers that astounded his colleagues, careful to frame his discoveries in terms human science could accept. As weeks turned to months, their connection deepened beyond anything Lucas had experienced. Their shared dreams became more complex, more intimate. Sometimes they would wake with tears streaming down their faces from the beauty they had witnessed together. Physical intimacy evolved between them, tender at first, then passionate, then something transcendent. When they joined, Lyra's light would envelop them both. Lucas would feel his consciousness expanding to touch something infinite. "Is this what it's like for your people?" he asked once, as they lay entwined in the aftermath of such a joining. "No," she whispered against his skin. "This is unique to us. Neither fully luminary nor fully human. Something new, for months after activating the beacon." They were hiking in the mountains when Lyra suddenly stopped, her face tilted to the sky. "They've received the signal," she said, her voice a mixture of joy and sorrow. "I can feel their response." Lucas took her hand, feeling the now familiar energy pulse between them. "How much time do we have?" Weeks, perhaps. No more. They made the most of those final weeks. Lucas took leave from the observatory, and they traveled to see the ocean, the desert, the great forest earth's wonders through Lyra's eyes. At night, their shared dreams became more intense, as if their minds were desperately trying to preserve what they had built together. On their last night, they stood on the mountain behind Lucas's cabin, watching the stars come out one by one. "My people will arrive at dawn," Lyra said softly. "Their vessel is cloaked. No one will see them come or go." Lucas wrapped his arms around her from behind, breathing in her scent of ozone and lavender. "I don't want to say goodbye." Lyra turned in his embrace, her luminous face serious. "Then don't." "What do you mean?" "Come with me," she said simply. "My research vessel has room for two. You could study the cosmos not just from afar, but up close. See worlds you've only dreamed of." Lucas's heart raced. "Would your people allow it?" "It would be unprecedented," she admitted. "But they value knowledge above all else. Your perspective would be ... valuable. And us?" Lucas asked, cupping her face. "What would we be to each other out there?" Lyra's light pulsed with emotion. "Bonded. Connected, what we already are. But recognized across the stars." As dawn broke over the mountain, a shimmering craft descended silently from the clouds. Lucas stood beside Lyra, a small bag of precious belongings slung over his shoulder, his hand firmly clasped in hers. "Are you certain?" she asked one last time. "Your world. Your work. ... Lucas looked at the woman beside him, alien, yet more familiar to him now than any human had ever been. In her, he had found not just connection but understanding, a shared vision of the universe and their place within it. "My work is to understand the cosmos," he said, squeezing her hand. "And you are showing me the way," as they boarded the waiting ship. Lucas cast one last glance at the earth spreading out below them, beautiful, familiar, and suddenly so small. Then he turned to face the stars and the new dawn breaking across both their lives. The vessel rose silently into the morning sky, carrying with it to beings who had found in each other something neither had known they were searching for: a bridge between worlds, a connection across the stars, and the end of loneliness for them both.